What was your foresight into writing a book?
I honestly didn't think it would be this popular.
Designers should learn how to code and developers should learn how to design.
It seems like everyone seems to converge on the same things. If you have a company that is full of designers and no one to code, it's not going to work.
Why is a chat-based interface dominant today?
User-friendly interface for humans is talking to each other. Chat takes you much closer to that sort of vision.
We've interacted with technology through buttons or keyboards. How would you assess a human's comfort level talking to tech?
It's more of a tech problem. It's not. I don't think humans should be learning how to talk to tech. The tech should get so good that talking to it should be very natural for you.
Should UX designers be scared given the advent of AI? Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Tech Talks. I'm Supreeth from AI Media House. Join with me today is a very interesting person and I'll tell you why. So Akshay Kore, he wrote a book called Designing Human-Centric AI Experiences back in August of 2022, right? And when did ChatGPT release? It released in November 2022. So what was your foresight into writing a book way before, ChatGPT and AI got popular as it is today?
Yeah, I honestly didn't think it would be this popular. I always had an interest in science fiction in general, and I thought that, hey, the way society is heading, like AI will be inevitable. Like we'll have some sort of predominant AI systems working in the world. That was the thesis, and basically worked in a bunch of companies where I worked in their AI teams largely. And what the gap that I noticed was that a lot of the designers that I was working with did not understand how the system worked, and a lot of the tech folks that worked with AI systems could not effectively communicate the limitations of the system, what you can do with these capabilities, etc. So I was always interested at the intersection of both user experience and technology. And I sort of informally started teaching people about, hey, this is what designers do to tech folks, and then this is what tech folks do to designers. Essentially, trying to bridge that gap between design and tech. That turned into sort of a course that I used to take. So I took a bunch of courses at different conferences, at HCI conferences, mainly like human-computer interaction conferences, on how to design AI products. Initially, there was not much audience. Then we started getting a lot more audience for these things. And I slowly started getting too many requests for something like this. And so I started writing a blog. A blog sort of turned into an offer for a book. So I said, let's figure out what to write. And essentially, the book is me trying to distill all the information that I have gathered from reading other books, listening to podcasts, trying these things out myself, figuring out what works, what doesn't work. Mainly understanding the psychology of a designer as well as the psychology of a tech person or a product manager, etc., and then how to sort of bridge that gap. Right. So the book is primarily for designers and product people to sort of figure out what to build and how to build, whether to build AI systems at all. And yeah, that's essentially how.
Right. So what is it that you teach, the product folks or the designers through your book and your courses, on how to build for AI? So what is it that you're trying to say in the book?
So at a high level, what you're trying to do is you're trying to develop these intelligent systems, right? But these intelligent systems at the same time are probabilistic in nature. Yeah. What that means is that they will be wrong sometimes. Will not, unlike traditional software where when you press a button, you get an expected output. In these cases, when you give the system a prompt, you will not always get the same kind of output all the time. Right? So there is low predictability, but higher, I would say, creativity and higher intelligence.
Right.
It's just, what I essentially teach is how do you, I essentially teach a mindset shift of going from a deterministic product development workflow to a probabilistic one. What that means is that when you're trying to develop an AI system, you have to consider that these machines or these systems will be wrong sometimes, right? And what you're essentially trying to do is you're trying to build trust with your users. Essentially, if an AI is not trustworthy, it will not be useful. So in the course, in the course or in the book, etc., wherever I talk about these things, I would essentially talk about you as a product person. How do you build trust with your users when they use these AI systems? And because these systems are probabilistic, they will be wrong and trust will be broken. What do you do about it? And the main things that you can do about it is you can either ask for feedback, acknowledge you're wrong, ask for feedback, and improve the system over time. Or you can explain what went wrong, essentially. Right? Or and the third thing essentially you can do is that you can give control back to the users. So basically have some sort of a human in the loop, give users more control over how the system outputs perform, etc. So at a high level, you're trying to build trust and get feedback from users.
Right. And obviously, a lot of AI products have come, some time after you releasing this book.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at some of the leading AI apps today, how have they obeyed, what you're trying to say in the book and the guidelines that you have laid out, to design AI systems?
Yeah, again, what I have is guidelines, not rules.
Okay,
not everyone has to follow what.
Yeah, for sure.
It seems like everyone seems to converge on the same things.
Okay.
Essentially, AI systems being probabilistic does not change, right? Any good AI product at this point of time will give you enough, will have enough trust building markers in the product, which would include giving you additional control. Right? Simple things like when you search for search on Copilot or like one of these AI tools for answers, right? Or Perplexity, for example, it would sort of give you the answer, but also the source to that answer. Right? Giving the source to that answer is the system trying to build trust with you and saying that, hey, I am not hallucinating this answer. I'm telling you this answer because of some other prior information. So essentially, it seems to be converging to the same ideas, and the interpretations might be slightly different. But essentially, everyone is trying to manage the probabilistic nature of these systems along with providing trust. Building trust includes a bunch of things, which is like providing how I generated someone, like telling you how I generated the answer, explaining to you how something was generated, and also giving you control. So, for example, you don't like a response from these systems, you are free to edit the response, free to ask a follow-up question, free to change the response to your liking, etc. No system is sort of controlling your behavior. It provides you much more control over the outputs.
So again, with specific AI systems, right? Like let's say an AI tutor based on math or an AI assistant for a lawyer. So the bounds are well defined, like if it's specifically built for a lawyer. When it comes to all these general models, like just chatgpt.com, anyone can go and do anything on that. So how hard is it for a designer to, sort of provide a boundary and tell the user that, okay, hey, this is what you can do here. This is what you can't do. Because you mentioned that trust is a very important thing. And if the AI sort of does not give you a right answer and does not adhere to the expectations of the user might just break the trust.
Yeah.
So how easy or difficult is it to provide information about what the AI can do without patronizing or overwhelming the user with the information?
So it generally comes down to creating these universal responses, right? You want to say that, hey, I can't do that. For example, ChatGPT can give you an answer to how to build like a biological weapon, for example, right? But you don't want it to.
Exactly.
So it operates under certain morals of a society in which it is not acceptable for this system that is generally available to answer these questions. In that case, you place some guardrails there where you don't let it answer those questions. Right? And the way to sort of nudge the user away from it is to sort of provide these universal responses that don't, or like it could be like, sorry, I can't answer that, or like it is now outside my area of expertise. Some generic response that the system can use. Another example we can think of is like, for example, when you ask like a voice assistant, like a Siri or something, like a sexual reference question, right? It will clearly, there are bounds to what you can't ask Siri. And when you ask that, it will give you either a stern response in certain assistants, it will give you a stern response and that it is not appropriate, or in certain other assistants, it might sort of slightly nudge you to like not ask these questions or can't answer. Sometimes it will tell you that, hey, I'm not a human, I don't know what this means. So
That's good.
in most cases, these LLMs can answer most of these things. You just want to control the bounds for the context which you're operating in.
Right. And along these lines, so obviously not everyone has access to the best models out there. So if I'm someone not using the best model of OpenAI, my outputs are subjected to a good amount of inaccuracies and errors. Now the problem is even the AI won't know that what it's giving is wrong. And in cases where even the user isn't aware that the output is wrong, how do you tackle that problem as a designer that, hey, maybe you shouldn't trust these responses too much? Are AI systems doing enough with that regard?
Correct. So currently they're not, like, because a lot of these AI systems tend to give you one-shot answers. Like you ask a question, you get one answer and you don't get like options of the same variation of the same answer.
But again, most of these discussions, the one that we're having and the problems we spoke about, emerge from a chat-based interface, which is like, I can confidently say around 85% of AI apps today. What is this? Why is a chat-based interface dominant today? I think we had spoken earlier and you gave me a beautiful analogy, and I really hope our listeners sort of get to.
So most users don't want to. My belief is that most people don't want to use software. Right? They just want to get something done. Right. The most user-friendly interface for humans is talking to each other. Right? I can tell you to do something and you would sort of do it, or you can tell me to like pick up this pen. I would pick it up for you. Right? You don't need to click a bunch of buttons for me to do it. Right? Chat takes you much closer to that sort of vision where I can like use free text or like use speech or whatever to sort of communicate in the most natural way that I know. I've learned this interface since birth. Right? And I am sort of using that same knowledge to sort of also instruct the computer.
Right.
This was in fact the original vision of like when computers were being developed. One of the first interfaces for computers was these chat-based interfaces. So you had these programs who could like do like simple responses to like questions or like play games with you via chat, etc. And I think we're sort of going back to that. I don't agree with like slapping a chatbot on everything. But it is a very familiar kind of thing for people to do. Like I can, instead of like me figuring out a very complicated way to click a bunch of buttons in interface, click a bunch of menu items, type a bunch of things to get my result, I can simply tell the system that, hey, I want this. You figure out how to do it. Right. You're intelligent enough to figure out. For example, like if you tell me to basically fill up a form to sort of write you a check, for example, right? You only need to do that much, and I will know enough information about the world to know what a check is, where to get it from. It is a bank specific document. If I don't have certain information, I will ask you, like for example, for how much amount do I get to ask, right? Who is the signatory? If I have to sign, I will sign it myself if I know that already. Now, all this can happen without you clicking a bunch of buttons, etc. Like we have sort of, as a society, built so many apps and so many like buttons and interfaces between people that we tend to forget that the goal of technology is to sort of remove this gap. Essentially, I want to be able to do something. I should be able to do it in the most easy way possible. The easiest way is talking to people.
So as you mentioned that most buttons and software are just a barrier between your intent and the outcome. So we've seen solutions like the Rabbit R1 or the Human-AI pin. Again, they're very early and they were sort of affected by a lot of, the infrastructure barrier where the models weren't smart enough. But from a design perspective, where do you think these products sort of failed?
They largely, I would say they failed in a building trust aspect
Yeah.
of the product, like what they claimed and what the product could actually do. There was a huge gap between the marketing material and the actual usage of the product.
Okay.
As soon as that happens, like you sort of break trust with people and then people will stop using it. It is largely a product development user experience problem. Like if the product worked the way it promised it would work, it might have even
Right.
taken off.
Right.
Their thesis is correct. You
Yep.
like I would say like you will have assistants around you, on you,
Right.
etc. How they will be interpreted might be
Yeah.
different. Like for example, like even glasses can be assistants for you. Like your watch can be an assistant
Yeah.
for you. At the end of it, an assistant is some intelligent entity
Right.
somewhere.
Right.
It could be cloud, on your device,
Okay.
on your clothes, whatever.
Right.
Right? Which sort of is able to achieve an outcome that you want. So, like you have an intent, it is able to satisfy that intent.
Right. But in a few ways, barriers also, are sort of important, right? So let's say when I'm trying to make a booking, right? I know where I am in the process of booking. I know what my previous actions are,
Yeah.
and I know what my upcoming actions are. So with something like the Human-AI pin, right, where there's no screen as such. So it is quite important that users get some feedback of their task or see a record of what they have done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how do you think this problem can be tackled? And do you think voice can be the only media to sort of, do you think that's much of an exaggeration that, okay, you can just get everything with voice, like what Human-AI sort of?
Yeah, I don't think like it makes sense for everything to be via voice.
Yeah.
Like certain information is better consumed via screens or like a larger display of information. Like it is better for you to see your blood report on a screen than getting information about every
sure.
value. Right? Or on a screen or a paper or whatever, but some physical interface.
Right.
Then getting it through like a sound signal.
Right.
So like our current world, it would be multimodal. It shall not be just voice.
Right.
Voice is a very easy way to make a request.
Yeah.
The answer to the request need not be voice.
Fair.
Right? The answer to the request could be voice in certain cases, or it could be combination of voice and images. It could be video, or it could be a 3D model, whatever. It could be
Right. But again, throughout time, again, let's talk more about voice because that seems to be the rage these days, with the Hume voice assistant also that's sort of letting you perform tasks with your voice.
Yeah.
But throughout time, we've interacted with technology through buttons or keyboards. So fair, that voice is more effective. But how would you assess a human's comfort level talking to tech, right? Like,
it's more of a tech problem. It's not.
Okay.
It is not. I don't think humans should be learning how to talk to tech. The tech should get so good that talking to it should be very natural for humans.
Right.
It is the inverse problem. It is a very complex problem.
Right.
Which is why like a lot of voice assistants like still end up in that uncanny valley of like being able to talk. Like because voice interfaces, apart from like just responding with sound, right? Sound has a lot of signals. Sound has your signal of text, which is like the actual message being communicated.
Yep.
But that message can be communicated in various ways depending on your tone of voice.
Yep.
Right? Now, tone of voice is extremely hard it's a hard technology problem, right? Where to put the pause, where to put a period, when to wait for a response, when to continue responding, when is it appropriate for me to talk over you, when I talk over you, when is it appropriate for you to stop?
Right.
And these are more natural things, like how we are talking right now.
Yeah.
Like when I'm saying these things, you end up giving me confirmation by doing this, or like saying yes, or something like you're sort of like linguistics is extremely hard from a tech standpoint. It's also extremely hard user experience problem.
Right.
We have like some levers in these voice systems to sort of choose it, but it's still like I don't think it's solved yet. But as soon as it gets solved, it feels much more natural.
Right.
Like how the ChatGPT assistant is sort of quite natural in that sense.
Right.
Right. We will stop like feeling this. is my hypothesis.
I was planning to ask you a question, should UX designers be scared given the advent of AI? But in the last 15-20 minutes, we've discussed so many problems that, the
There's
designers...
lots of problems to solve. It just feels... The thing is that UX is not just building screens.
Yeah.
User experience is everything. A user experience with a product is everything from going to the website to actually getting the service.
Yeah.
Right? And multiple touch points between the service. For example, when I book a salon, or let's say my wife books a pedicure on Urban Club, right? The user experience is not just like the interface of choosing it. It is also like when the notification is sent. Right? When the notification is sent, how long do you wait for a response? If you don't get a response, how long do you wait to send a reminder? The experience is a lot more things than just screens.
Right.
There's lots of problems to solve. Again, for example, if my mom had to do the same thing, she would be wary of using, she would not prefer using an Urban Lab or something. She would just call her local Paranga Didi to do it. And for her, again, that interface of talking, if we can replicate with technology, it is gonna open up a lot more services, a lot more opportunities for maybe startups or other companies to work. So I feel there's lots of problems to solve. Designers tend to focus only on the UI problem or the screen, black rectangle problem. There's a lot more problems outside the...
Right. Because every now and then you see some sort of a reel that comes up which says, okay, this is the end of UX design and all of that.
Yeah.
So what is the shift in mentality that you would advise as someone who's been in the industry for long, someone who's picking up UX design? There's a lot of opportunities out there, but the knowledge and the material that's out there for him or her to study is probably not tailored to something that focuses on AI first products. But given the rise that we're seeing in AI first products, what is the mentality that you would advise a young designer to have?
I would say one controversial take is getting out of this bootcamp mentality with being useful.
Right.
It doesn't make sense for everyone to just take up a 3-week boot camp to learn a specific skill of using a tool like Figma to deliver an experience.
Right.
Working with companies is, I would say, much more useful if you get the opportunity.
Right.
Working with interesting people is much more useful. Right. Most of the things that are being taught in these bootcamps, so you will be able to learn it on YouTube for free.
Right.
In most cases. A more interesting thing to learn is psychology. A more interesting thing to learn is the world, materials around you, how humans behave in different situations,
right?
Which will provide you much more insights than just being able to build screens on top of on defined interface. For example, we don't even know if an interface like your glasses comes about. And most people are gonna build screens on top of glasses,
right?
But it is probably not the right interface for, as it might be something else completely,
right?
Which we don't know.
Right.
And we will discover it through human behavior, trying, testing, prototyping stuff, etc., which is outside of building screens of Figma.
Right.
So I would say being curious is underrated. Being able to sort of jump into problems and trying to figure out things, not going into a problem and saying I know everything, rather going into a problem and saying that, hey, I don't know anything. Well, let me figure out how to solve for it. And I might fail, but being able to have that resilience, being able to trial and error, failing a lot and then learning from it. Again, I might be getting too philosophical from a designer's perspective, but what I'm trying to communicate is boot camps and learning specific tools is not a good long-term strategy.
Right.
Good long-term strategy is understanding people, understanding human behavior, things outside of the world of design.
Right.
And then bringing it together. And your job is to basically make the interface between technology and people easier. That is user experience, right?
Right.
Now, the user experience can be on screens.
Right.
It can be through sound. It can be through this room, right? everything is essentially part of that user experience. And you need not like box yourself with like, right now this is a popular industry. It is in some few years it will go away. Right? That should not take your foundations. So should be like focusing on the foundations will be a good strategy rather than focusing on like specific tools that might come and go. Or specific like skill sets, like building a UI is, I would say, like a low value skill set now, because in most cases these LLMs will be able to do a much better job.
Yeah, so taking a step back from ChatGPT or all the other voice-based potential interfaces that we're discussing about, look at the apps that we're trying to use today, right? You have apps from entertainment, from productivity and all of that. Everyone's trying to pack in some sort of an AI feature, right? Because it doesn't sell without AI these days. So as a designer, I mean, from the apps that you use in your daily life, how critical are you about these AI features? Given that you've written an entire book about it, so how does the critic in you use these AI features in the app? With some examples, if you could.
Yeah, I don't critique it as much as like I just observe how things are evolving. Let's take a very strong AI app like Netflix. For example, right? It doesn't have a chat interface. Per se, but they use a lot more AI than lots of traditional companies that claim that they're AI first, right? The whole Netflix homepage is a recommendation that you get. And that recommendation is determined by your past behavior, your usage habits, or maybe even like what your family is watching, what device you're watching it on, etc. What kind of things you watch on specific kinds of devices. There's like a bunch of parameters that the system will use to sort of provide you a list of recommendations. Now, this recommendation is extremely important for Netflix for their business to run. Right? If the recommendations are not good, it will reduce their engagement. Reduction in engagement means reduction in subscriptions. Reduction in subscription means like lower revenue. So for them, that interface of like the recommendations is extremely important, and they will do a lot. They will do a lot of experimentation and a lot of work in even making it 0.1% better. Right? Because they can largely only show you like around max 40 things on your screen. But Netflix has like more than 20,000 titles. Well, how do you choose 40 from 20,000? That is specific for you. Your Netflix will be much more different than mine. Even if our interests might be slightly similar, you will not get this exact same recommendations that I get. Right? And they're sort of treating each customer as like a, I would say like as a single individual user for giving you an editorial list of like titles to watch. Right? And based on whether you watch something or not, even simple things like whether you put something in your wish list to watch later, right? Or you set a reminder to watch something later, are signals for this system to sort of improve over time. And there's no chat interface. Right? You are just seeing a bunch of recommendations. It might seem simple, but like it's a very hard problem. Like in fact, like Netflix values just their homepage at $1 billion. Like the interface of the homepage, and they would do interesting things like even what poster of a movie to show you versus me will also be different. They also did a bunch of Gen AI experiments where they like created posters on the fly for different kinds of titles that they have. Right? Again, like when you open a title on Netflix, it will give you something like a percentage match. Right? Percentage match essentially is an intuitive way of you understanding that, hey, if it is a 95% match, I will probably like this. And you also trust that you will like it, and generally it tends to work. In my case, at least, it tends to work. If something is a 50% match, it will probably not even be on your homepage. Right? But it could be that when you search for the title, it shows you. And if you end up liking it, that's also again signal for Netflix to sort of modify that homepage, refresh it to cater to your needs. Again, this is an example of using AI, very cutting edge AI in that sense, but no chat interface. So your interface was pointing and clicking.
That's it.
So apart from chat, like another way in which humans interface with their environment or interface with technology is through pointing things, which is why the mouse pointer is such an important device. It allows you to point things on a screen which would otherwise be hard for you to do with a keyboard. Right? So pointing is also one way of. So, for example, I could say to you like switch off that button. Right? I communicated it with voice.
Right.
But unless I point
Which button?
is not useful information. So like I would say like along with voice, you also have like pointing as one, which is why like these image recognition systems are important.
Okay.
Right? Which is why a lot of these foundational AI companies invest in image vision capabilities along with text and voice and LLMs. LLMs are a good interpreting layer to do all these things.
Right.
But from a purely human interface lens, you basically communicate with other humans. So a good framework to think about it is how you communicate with other humans.
Right.
I could talk to you, I could chat with you,
Right.
right? I could point things to you, or I could touch or show you some things. I could pick up things and place it in front of you and show you that. I could draw things for you.
Right.
I could write things for you.
Right.
Now, imagine all these capabilities being imbued into a machine. What we have so far covered is just me being able to chat to you and sort of talk to you. The world is still like, there's a lot more things to do. We still don't know how to point to things very well. Still don't know how to like draw something and interpret it well. You do, some of these systems do, but it's not as good as how, like for example, I could draw you a story of a boy and a girl,
Yeah.
right, and write some things down, right? For you, it will be an easy problem to solve, right? Because you're reading a comic book. But for an AI system, it's a very hard problem. It's one of the kinds of Turing tests that you have
Right.
for AI. Another kind of Turing test is being able to assemble IKEA furniture.
Right.
No AI systems can do it yet, but I can just give you an instruction manual, show you a bunch of things, and you can
Right.
do it. So robotics is going to be one other thing. Robotics requires pointing things, perception, reading things. Requires less of voice. A little bit voice, maybe to instruct. But so there's a whole world out there. So Netflix is I would say Netflix is an example. We can also take factories as an example, right? Robots in factories, like let's say you're a factory manufacturing car doors, for example. Now, in that case, what would happen is there are two ways of doing this. Earlier, you used to have to code this entire system.
Right.
You used to tell that this machine is responsible for doing this specific thing, and you have to develop these very complex machines, very expensive machines for factories. So the capex increases for factories when you are developing custom things. But now you could have like a generic 6-axis robot, is like essentially like a hand, which can like sort of do a bunch of things in a very generic fashion. That it can hold the door, it can pick up things and place it somewhere. It can screw things into the right location. All it needs is the ability to move in the environment, ability to perceive its environment, which is perception. It is also called perception and motion planning, right? And being able to sort of understand objects. So it should know that this is a screwdriver, this is a bolt, this is the hole in which I need to screw it. Right?
Okay.
So that is one part of it. The second problem for this is that how do you even teach this machine something like this? There's lots of things to do if people just notice problems in the world.
Right.
I think it's funny you bring the IKEA example. Like, it's a distant world where a bunch of robots are fixing furniture, communicating with each other. But in some sense, that's already happening in the world of software, where you have AI agents sort of interacting with each other. So do you think it's time we assign a user persona for AI, like, and treat AI as the user of a tool, like how we've been designing for humans?
Yeah, that makes sense. In fact, like in my book, I talk about this idea of collective intelligence. In fact, like I feel like a lot of modern, like the next wave of companies, even current companies, should start thinking of agents as a participant in your company. right? And it could be like every person as an assistant is also a way to think about it. Like it just improves your productivity and like makes you a better, I would say like entity in the system, right? But at the same time, you can also think of some of these agents operating autonomously.
Right.
Right? Some examples of that could be like you're a McDonald's, right? Now, an agent that sort of manages the order flow, right? A machine is much more capable of doing it than a person. I recently saw a video of a factory in China. So lots of factories in China do this. Basically, there's one technical operator and rest of the whole factory is managed by just machines. And which each machine is an agent, an entity in the overall system. So the job of the human now becomes more about directing these machines and less about doing the actual job.
Right.
And as you mentioned through all of these examples, right, more or less AI is being implemented in every aspect of an organization, be it from software to design. So everyone needs to know how an AI functions. So specifically when it comes to designers, there's this argument that designers should learn how to code and developers should learn how to design because the gap is very less now. AI is just everywhere. So how much of a weightage do you add to this argument that a generalist role is going to sort of take over further? Should designers learn to code or coders learn to design?
I don't have a strong opinion on this because I've seen both things work.
Right.
Right? I can code a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? And it works for me.
Right.
But I know a bunch of designers who can't code, but they're extremely good at their craft.
Right.
It works for them also.
Right.
I don't think it makes sense. It will be context specific.
Right.
If you have a company that is full of designers and no one to code, it's not going to work.
Yeah, fair.
Right? And if you have a company which is full of coders but not many designers, then it is your primary product as a user interface. It's probably not going to work as well. And it will require for some people to start learning new skills, essentially. I don't buy this argument of boxing people into specific roles or job descriptions. Most people can learn to do anything.
Right.
And if a designer wants to build something and cannot rally an engineer to do it, then they might have to do code. Similarly, if an engineer wants to build something and cannot rally a designer to sort of build that same thing, in both cases the outcome is failure.
Right.
In that case, the better thing is to sort of learn the other skills. But most of these LLMs are going to make a lot of these things easy.
Right.
It is sort of easy for me to write some boilerplate code for most things I want.
Right.
With a Claude or a OP or a GPT, etc.
Sure.
But it won't be like, so far it is not. I don't think any of my team members on the engineering side would accept that code.
Right.
At the same time, like a DALL-E can generate beautiful images of things, right? But I don't think it will be completely accepted by a designer currently. Right. So I would say like be fluid, be okay with learning either skills. And again, like these systems are going to anyway like reduce that gap.
How would you assess the importance of user research going forward, understanding humans? Or do you feel, I think the other day you mentioned it very well, that forget understanding humans can't tell us what their problems are or what they actually want.
Yeah.
So if you could elaborate more on that.
So user research, I feel, will become a critical skill in this world, because a lot of the skills that were needed to build the interface you will like just make individual designers so efficient that you might not need as many UI designers per se, right? But understanding people is like a much harder problem, right? It's the famous Henry Ford quote, right? Like if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And it takes creativity and imagination to imagine a device like a car. Similar with the iPhone, right? Most people thought touch interface is are not going to be useful. It is going to be clunky. I need these BlackBerry type devices. But now, as you see, that it has worked and people have solved the haptic problem through a different way, completely irrelevant from using physical controls. Most people will not tell you explicitly what they want. Right? When you do user research, most people will be nice. And it is very hard to uncover core problems. Right? It requires you to probe deeply, you to ask questions in a counterintuitive manner. Like if you ask somebody whether they like your product or not, the answer you're going to get most times is yes. Right? Unless somebody is completely pissed off at you or something. But most people are nice. Most people are going to be polite. So you will always get positive answers when you go into this. What you want to uncover is the problem. Most people will not tell you problems. And they might tell you problem, but they might tell you the solution to the problem, which might not really be the solution to the exact problem that you're looking for. So, for example, let me take YouTube as an example, right? If you had asked people about video sites, right, they might have said that my problem is that I'm not able to view videos on the internet fast enough. Right? But now once you get view videos on the internet fast enough, right, you want to now view more videos. Now the solution to the problem is I will give you a library of all the videos in the world. Right? But it presents a new problem for you, which is how do I choose what to select? This now that is good. Choice is going to be a third problem, which is basically if I give you infinite information, how are you able to sift from infinite information? Most people will say, let me give you search. And search will solve a bit of the problem. But sometimes you don't know what you want to search, want to watch. How do you solve for that? Right? All these things you're not going to be able to discover by asking people exactly. Because the solution to a library of videos is search. But it is probably not the right solution. A better solution is a recommendation system. Right? This you will mostly discover through talking to people, which is user research. User research is a fancy term for just interviews your users, like talking to your users. When the Apple Watch came, you would expect like there to be a market for like some watch bands. Right? But somebody said that, hey, Apple Watch doesn't have enough sensors. I want more sensors. Turning a band into a sensor, you would not really get that idea just from
talking to people.
Simply asking people what they want. Right? You would want to ask them, actually, I want this watch to also be able to tell me my temperature sometimes, because I use that temperature information for a specific use case that I have. You might find some of these on a Reddit forum or something. Etc. So some people then eventually built a band that had more sensors that connected with your Apple Watch. Right? It is the intelligence of the Apple designers to provide the interface connection between the health kit and this thing to make this possible. But again, like that sort of a thing, right, gives them the idea that, hey, actually, we need to provide more sensors in our watch. Most people are using these workarounds to. But like what I did right now is just user research. It is. I did not interview a user. I just looked at some Reddit forum, looked at competitor products, etc. And I discovered a new improvement of my product. So user research is going to be important. I don't think it is going to go away. It will just be much more efficient. Like a lot of traditional user research involves transcribing things, making notes of stuff, like clustering things together manually, stuff like that. You could just ask an assistant to do a bunch of things. It will do like 90% good job. So most research teams tend to do a lot more of like the manual labor. Manual labor will go away. People will directly move from like asking the question to
just having
generating the insight.
And if we're talking about users, so last week I just came across a report that said India has the second largest number of AI users out there. So, and there's a lot of AI products that are being developed in India for Indians.
Yeah.
You see a lot of Indic LLMs that speak, all Indian languages. So, if you're someone who's building AI for India, as from a design perspective, from a psychological perspective, how do you understand what the Indian user wants, and how do you tailor it for an average Indian user?
Okay, so India is not one country. It's
Fair.
not so country. Every 4 kilometers, culture changes. You're not going to be able to design for everyone at the same time. We'll find these groups of people that are going to be interested in different things. Right? And you could cluster that group based on geography. You could cluster it based on language. You could cluster them based on interests. You could also cluster them based on income levels, demographics. So one is you need to decide what you want to cluster this group based on and how you want to target. Most of these groups are large markets. Right? Some of them are larger markets. A lot of later quick commerce companies are technically targeting the cream layer of society. Essentially, people who make above a certain amount of income or who can sort of afford to use it on a long-term basis. Being able to use these tools daily is not a reality for most Indians. Right? So one is, I would say, just from a user experience standpoint, one is figure out who you're designing for. Right? Once you figure out who you're designing for, a lens I would use it, what are their currently most commonly used apps. Right? So WhatsApp is a good example. Right? Most people will use sort of a WhatsApp. And if WhatsApp is the mental model for doing something, there could be an opportunity in doing like using an interface like WhatsApp. Or like if they use Facebook a lot, Instagram a lot. Meesho is another example. Right, of company. So I would sort of, one level of research I would do, at least from a user experience perspective, is currently used apps to sort of identify patterns of behavior. Right? Even on WhatsApp, our help will not type. She generally will like send a voice message. Right? So for her, voice is a primary mode of interaction, and we also respond to her with voice. And once you sort of understand like these things, you can extract like, hey, these are certain interface elements that may work for this user. And you sort of develop the solution around these interface elements. And it is not, and Amazon is not going to work for that user. Like traditional Amazon is not going to work. And Amazon will introduce a microphone or something else to do it. Right? And it might be a completely different interface. Like, and again, we are like, and again, like because of these tools, because you're going to have a lot more tools, you have the opportunity to have a lot more customized, personalized tools. I could imagine a future where you have your own Uber. Right? Which is catered for you. Right? You do not have to learn the pattern of Uber. Uber learns your patterns. And it changes the interface for you. I feel like we are sort of hinting towards it in a different way. Right now, like productivity improvement will just mean that there's lots more apps, very specific apps for specific things. I was not aware of this astrology app phenomenon. And then I discovered it through when I went to a wedding. And I'm like, oh, this is
there's an app for
market.
everything.
So there's like religious tech is interesting. I was not in my worldview, right? Right? But there's a huge market for things like this, and the interface that you need for those things is very different from a traditional modern first world country interface. And it need not be the same, right? You don't have to copy anyone. So again, requires user research. It's not
all comes back to
not going to happen without understanding the users.
So that's it, Akshay. Thank you so much for the wonderful conversation.
Of course, thank you.
So if you're a UX designer who's still scared after listening to all the problems we've spoken about since the last 1 hour, just don't be. Just go ahead and solve those problems. So thank you. Thank you for listening.